in deeply. Bow your head in gratitude. And slowly stretch. And rise. Come into the present.
You have one? Pam did not know what topic we had for this today, and she nailed it. That's amazing. Great minds think alike. Okay, today we're going to talk about interfaith. Because it is Christmas time, it's a good time to do it, and because we are now really deeply into a period of history where separation is extremely dangerous and painful for everyone. All kinds of separations. So we won't go into that, but in thinking about this season, I thought, the Dalai Lama is, one of the things he's really big on is interfaith. And of course he's written the book Beyond Religion, which talks about the fact that all religions need to come together and settle on ethics, because they're not doing too well with separation, each one thinking it's the only one, and that sort of thing. And he's also been very strong because Buddhism has no dogma. It relates well to anyone else's religious or faith emotions and feelings and thoughts. But he always says, we're not trying to make Buddhists out of you. We hand you our teachings to do with as you will. And hopefully they will benefit you in whatever religion or faith you currently are, or non-faith, doesn't matter. So today, we have a video which has several Jesuit Catholics, priests, who are also Zen priests and teachers, and have been, they're now aging, but they started when they were in seminary, and the Second Vatican said that they could actually investigate other religions, which was pretty unusual. So they are there, and we are here, and through the miracle of technology, and hopefully we didn't check the sound, I hope it's okay. You will find many things here to relate to. Many of the teachings we go on over and over again, and a real sense that in a world that is very divided, we can definitely come together. So here we go. This is the title of this is Jesus and Buddha.
Buddha has enabled me to see things about Jesus that I never would have been able to see without Buddha. When I start finding what I believe is true in other religions, of course it doesn't remain in my head. It touches my whole being, my heart, my practice, and I start adopting that religion to some extent.
The words of Jesus that are starting to run very self. When we first hear that, it sounds almost impossible or cruel. It's only later we realize that it is mercy itself, because the self that we cling to doesn't exist. It is a construction of the human mind.
Emptiness is this really vortex of life energy, where everything is interconnected and everything comes out of it. So emptiness is your wide openness to see whatever is coming to you in this life. Ah, wow, this is new. How interesting. That is it.
Gautama became Buddha because he woke up. Jesus became Christ because he woke up to the divine spirit that was given to him in his very being. Karl Rahner said, to say that Jesus is divine means that Jesus realized the full potential of what it means to be human.
Even if I don't see it again, or ever feel it, I know it is. And that if once it held me, it never does. For me, Zazen is prayer. To come into the presence of mystery and sit with attention, reverence, gratitude need not be spoken. We don't have to use the words. What would I do with words when I try to remind God of something God forgot?
When you can really be mindful of this present moment and recognizing that its depth, its mystery, is deeper than any thought you have, than any feeling that you have. It's hard to find words for this. That's when you feel that you are held, that you are sustained, that what you really are is deeper than what you think you are, or than anything anybody says you are. It's deeper. And that reality is the Christ spirit. That reality is our Buddha nature. That's what it is. Jesus came to experience the reality of the Spirit, a power, a love that calls us to have a particular concern for people who have been pushed aside by the powers that be, for the marginalized, the oppressed. This, I think, is central to the experience of Holy Mystery, as we experience that Holy Mystery through the teachings of Jesus.
We participate in the mystery of Christ. Paul said, you are free in Christ, free of this old binding sin of self-centeredness and pride. And you live in the vision of love and kingdom of God, which is feast of equals, where justice is flowing.
When Jesus said, I am the truth, I understand it to mean wherever there is truth, there is Jesus. So when we seek the truth, we are seeking Jesus. One of the Buddhas said we are seeking the Buddha. Once a student asked the teacher, who is the Buddha? And the teacher said, you are you. That's what we mind about the Buddha. Don't speak to someone else. Don't imagine a Buddha out there and start speaking to that Buddha. Just look deeply into yourself.
Buddha has enabled me to see things about Jesus that I never would have been able to see without Buddha. When I start finding what I believe is true in other religions, of course it doesn't remain in my head. It touches my whole being, my heart, my practice, and I start adopting that religion to some extent. I am nurtured by two different religious traditions. My Christian practice and beliefs and my Buddhist practice and beliefs. And both of them, now they're different. That's what makes it so interesting. That's what makes it exciting and fruitful. My interest in Buddhism actually goes way back to when I was 13, 14 years old, and I decided that I wanted to become a missionary priest in the Catholic Church. The beginning of a long process. I went to the seminary for all 14 years and was ordained a priest. But my primary motivation in the beginning was, since I loved all these wonderful Buddhist people, I felt I had to convert them to Jesus, because otherwise they're in big trouble. Their eternal salvation is at stake. But as I then began to actually study Buddhism, and even more so as I began to meet Buddhists and enter into dialogue with Buddhists, my more academic interest in Buddhism led to a decision to start practicing. Happily, I'm married to a Buddhist. Kathy and I do a lot of talking and exploring and sitting together, and that is extremely enriching. Buddhism helped me discover how I might more deeply experience the reality of God. This was in the Buddhist insistence that truth, they don't use the word God, but that truth, ultimate reality, the way things are, is to be found within myself and within this world. In other words, what I call God is not an entity out there that has to step into my life. Buddhism affirms that truth is that which we find within this world. It just answered so many difficulties I had with the what is oftentimes an exaggerated Christian teaching and talking about God as if God is this supreme entity out there, this infinite Father being, this super person. And that's why Buddha didn't want to talk about God. Because to talk too much about God, that distracted you looking out there rather than looking into yourself. And so that was the tremendous help.
When I was in Japan as a young Jesuit, I was teaching English and baseball, and we had a championship team there with the high school, middle school boys at Ronko High School in Kobe. When I entered the Jesuits, I was simply Catholic. I never thought of being interested in Buddhism. The Second Vatican Council changed everything for Catholics. The Jesuits, following the council, urged us not merely to tolerate other religions, but to admire them and to promote the good that they have, because there's good in every religion, and our job was to find out what was good, all that was good, and promote it. Promote it even as different from our own understanding of the truth. And finally, more than that, to practice the truth of the other, to walk in their shoes, because only if we walk in their shoes do we really understand them or can appreciate them. I found out that many Jesuits were interested in Buddhism, especially Zen Buddhism. They introduced me to Yamada Roshi of Kamakura, who knew about us. His son went to one of our high schools, and he was very open to us, and he welcomed me into his Zendo, which was another great gift, because I really knew nothing. But the personality of Yamada Roshi touched me deeply. And I can't explain that even why this man, just when he walked into the Zendo, touched me so deeply. I had the feeling that this is it. I read later Thomas Merton said when he encountered Zen Buddhism, he said, I don't know what it means yet, but this is it. I guess it was the reasonableness of Zen, the sanity of it, and the compassionate lifestyle that it presented, was was very appealing to me. Appealing was the command in my spirit, that this should be followed also. I studied with Swami Roshi for a semester of my sabbatical in Los Angeles, and then I met Glaston Roshi, who at that time was his heir apparent. So Glaston Roshi then became my teacher. He was really wonderful to me in every way. When the time came, he wanted me to be a teacher. There were many Buddhists who were upset by this because I was Catholic and Jesuit. Glaston said to them, "Are we one or are we not?" And they said, "Well, he's not even a priest. He's not a Zen priest." And Glaston said, "He is a priest. We have to ordain him again. What is this about?" And so he faced down some serious opposition. So he probably understood that the Zen practice does not interfere with anyone's faith. It's not about faith at all. Zen is beyond yes or no about God. Zen is a skill, perhaps like learning to play the piano. And that faith need not enter into it. It can enrich a faith if that's the person is deeply practicing his own faith. Zen can enrich it. But for those who have no faith, that's perfectly all right too from a Zen point of view. We open the possibility of people being themselves, whatever that is, without judging them. This young monk went into the mountains to find a teacher. To find the teacher, meaning to find life itself. And deep in the mountains he heard a voice. The Japanese call this hearing the voice of the cuckoo. Something called him deep in his own nature, in his own mind and heart. And the voice said, "All things are impermanent." And the young man was deeply touched by this. In other words, he heard it because he was silent, because his search was thorough. He heard the teaching, all things are impermanent.
I was born and raised in a third-generation Christian family in Korea, Presbyterian family. So I went to church every morning and every Sunday. But my encounter with the Buddhism actually started with my personal struggle. At the time I was going through my divorce, and I didn't know what to do about this. There's so much suffering, I don't know. Did I do it or not? I was teaching women in religion in Cambridge at the time. And one day, I walk home, I discovered this Korean temple in the middle of a central square in Cambridge. So I walk in, and they have a meditation instruction. So I sat and I learned meditation instruction because I need to do something for my suffering. Then I went to the very first interview with the Zen master. So he asked me, "Why are you here?" So I said, "Oh, I'm suffering," and I did all my melodramatic stories about, I love this man so much, but, he became a religious fundamentalist. What can I do? And maybe I have to leave. So I pour out all my suffering, expecting his empathy. And Zen master looked at me in a very quiet spirit and asked me, "So?" I said, "I told you all this suffering story, and your question is so?" So I was kind of angry inside. I felt, this Zen master doesn't know psychology 101 and pastoral counseling 101. He heard this story of suffering. He needs to give some comfort. But he said, "So?" So I was kind of dumbfounded. Then, after a little bit of silence, he asked me, "It's very interesting. The first noble truth of Buddhism is like everybody is suffering. And you just think you are the only one who are suffering in this world. So why do you think you are so special? The first question, first 공한, Zen Master Sungsan asked me was, who are you? Then he said, if you don't know that answer, go to the Dharma room and sit and meditate. Just ask this question, who am I? Who am I? And get the answer. And if you get the answer, come back to me to report. And until that time, you just sit down and ask, who am I? So you breathe in, who am I? And breathe out, don't know. Who am I? Don't know. That's all you need to do. Then he said, you will find the answer, and you will find your true self. Then you will not suffer anymore. So many years passed with this question, who am I, really? And don't know. So that was the beginning of my journey. Keep this don't know mind. But in the beginning, this don't know gave me kind of anxiety. It's like your bottom fall apart. And if really I don't know the ground of my being, then what am I? So it gives me kind of a uneasy feeling. But with practice over the year, I started to learn how to be relaxed, how to be, just to be in that big don't know with the trust. In that trust, everything is possible. So when my don't know becomes bigger and bigger, my freedom and also my peace and acceptance is getting bigger and bigger. So Zen Master Sungsan really gave me the wonderful first question, who are you? And don't know.
There's a classic story in Zen of a student coming to the teacher and saying that he is bound by his bad actions of the past. Could the teacher free him? And the teacher said, well, go out and find this self that you feel is bound by your bad actions. The student finally says, well, I can't find that self. And the teacher says, there I have. I found you. The words of Jesus that we must die to our very self. When we first hear that, it sounds almost impossible or cruel. It's only later we realize that it is mercy itself, because the self that we cling to doesn't exist. It is a construction of the human mind. And it's necessary to put that down in order to enter the fullness of reality, where Christ is found, from the Catholic point of view. From the Buddhist point of view, of course, it's necessary to transcend your own mental conceptions of the self, to reach something else. And that's what the effort in Zazen, the Zen hall and Zen meditation is doing, is trying to decenter the self, to get us to cease from repeating patterns of thought become accustomed to, and that we identify with our very self. The Buddhist has to free himself of his Buddhist self, the Christian has to free himself from his Christian self, to the extent that these are constructs of the mind. Yamada Roshi said that to me when I was sitting with him. He said, I'm not trying to make you a Buddhist, I'm trying to empty you in imitation of your Lord Jesus Christ, who emptied himself. So Yamada went right to the heart of Christianity. But the goal is not to just repeat Christian dogmas, or attend Christian services, but to recognize and activate the oneness you have with Christ, and Christ emptied himself. So the path to Christ that Yamada Roshi was saying is very similar to the path to the Buddha, self-emptying.
students understand emptiness. So as soon as I talk about emptiness, they think emptiness is psychological emptiness. So they have a big hole here in their heart, or they feel lonely, they feel unloved and meaninglessness, or sometimes nihilistic, and just something is not there. They need to feel it. They think emptiness is that, very negative way. But Buddhist emptiness is not that. Buddhist emptiness is, in a way, it is a fullness. So I always liked what Thich Nhat Hanh said. Empty of what? That is important. Empty of this solid, unchanging, fixed self, fixed nature. So emptiness is this really vortex of life energy, where everything's interconnected and everything comes out of it. So emptiness is your wide openness to see whatever is coming to you in this life. Ah, wow, this is new. How interesting. That is emptiness.
Ladies and gentlemen, in this true self, there is eternal happiness. In this true self, there is a great freedom that is devoid of all obstructions. You will become one body with the whole human race and one household with all sentient beings and insentient beings throughout the entire world. The ultimate concern of Buddhism is enlightenment, waking up to the fact that all is profoundly interrelated, that nothing exists unto itself, that nothing has its own individual or individualized being, but that we are all part of an interconnected reality that is an interconnected reality that is vital, alive, and that functions primarily through compassion, or what Christians would call love. Prajna, wisdom, that is the growing awareness that I am not just this individual substantial being, but I am more. I am, in Christian language, I am part of spirit. Spirit that I see in Jesus Christ. But that is my true identity, not my individual self. And that gives me, or can give me, a deep peace. In experiencing that, I feel this connectedness with, and that means a compassion and love for all sentient beings. So, taking these Buddhist teachings, I went back to the Bible, looking at some of the central teachings or symbols of my Christianity. One of them that just leapt out was Christians. One of the primary symbols that we Christians use for God is spirit. Spiritus, pneuma, ruach. This means that God is spirit. And what is spirit? Spirit is that which animates. Spirit is that which fills us, which moves in ways in which we can never truly perceive or forecast. But spirit is alive, is that which. And so, the symbol of spirit from my Christian tradition became alive with meaning, not just for my head, but for my prayer, for my meditation, to feel or to imagine the ultimate God as this interconnecting spirit. This beautiful, I think, this interconnecting spirit. There are very few definitions of God in the New Testament. In fact, maybe there's only 2 or 3 where it says God is. And those instances, they come from the writings attributed to John. God is love. God is spirit. Those are the two, love and spirit. Well, love is the compassionate energy of the interconnecting spirit. And so, you see, this is where God is no longer an entity out there. But Buddhism has helped me, and I'm not saying that Buddhism is the only way to discover this, certainly not. But Buddhism is our way of helping Christians to perhaps to come to a deeper, and I would say more personal, more mystical experience of God.
More and more I feel my Christian notion of God as love and my Buddhist notion of Dharma, they come together almost like a love meets wisdom. We don't know beyond all concept and all name and things. If we really trust this don't know mind, in the don't know, everything is possible. It's like, actually, we don't know what is the best for our life. Whether what we think is necessary for us to be happy and to be wholesome, we need to have this and this and this. That's what we think. Maybe it's not what we really need to have an enlightened life. So this don't know mind taught me radical humility. You really don't know. So whatever needs arise around you, you respond freely with open heart without clinging to your old unchanging self. Christian notion of being in Christ and Buddhist notion of no self and true self have something in common. You are free from this binding ego, then open to receive love of God and open to act as a good Christian disciple or a good bodhisattva. My favorite words from Christian tradition actually came from so-called Gnostic gospel of Thomas. There Jesus talks about salvation. Jesus said, if you bring out what is within you, what is within you will save you. But if you cannot bring out what is within you, what is within you will destroy you. So whenever I heard that message of Jesus, I feel, yes, that's what is within you. It's true self, our true self, which is not bound to either our sin or this unchanging, solid illusion of a self.
Gautama became Buddha because he woke up. Jesus, the son of Mary, became Christ, the Son of God, because he woke up to the divine spirit that was given to him as very being. Karl Rahner said, to say that Jesus is divine means that Jesus realized the full potential of what it means to be human. What it means to be human is to wake up to be open to the Spirit of God that is given to us by God in our very beings. When we are created, when we come forth, we already are human beings endowed with God's Spirit, sustained by God's Spirit. Our problem is we don't know it. We don't trust it. Maybe we've grown up in situations where that has just become so obscure. And Jesus, Buddha, can help us realize it. But when we realize it, it's not just something that is up here. It's a realization that becomes power, energy, transformative, or what Christians call grace.
Grace is not something from outside. Grace is the very presence of God in us, enlightening us, humanizing us. The greater our humanity, then the greater capacity we have to receive God's grace in Christian theological terms. Theos says the fire of heaven has to come down on something. We're expected to do our part in developing our human nature, even though that too is a grace. So every step forward we take to the goal of our nature, God's grace is there to lead us, to enlighten us, to enrich it. To become one with yourself, to see the breadth of the self, or the light of the self, or the beauty of the self, is then to recognize the breadth and the beauty and the light of Christ, because we are not separate. It is Christ growing within us in all that we do. We can think of Christ in a relational sense, that Christ is another whom we love or serve, or something like that. But it is also very Catholic to see that Christ is not other. I am not simply a friend of Christ, but I am Christ himself. Do you not know, as St. Paul says, you are the body of Christ. You are Christ himself, and the other is Christ himself. It's that unity of Christ with the world and with each one of us that is an intimacy of identity, not just relationship, but identity. So everyone we meet, as the Irish press says, is Christ.
St. Paul writes to the Galatian community. He says, "It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me and as me." Paul is saying, I'm not living. It's Christ who's living, however, in me. Buddhism is helping me to comprehend that. That brings me to a different understanding of Paul Mitter. When you can really be mindful of this present moment and recognizing that its depth, its mystery, is deeper than any thought you have, any feeling that you have. It's hard to find words for this. That's when you feel that you are held, that you are sustained, that what you really are is deeper than what you think you are, or than anything anybody says you are. It's deeper. And that reality is the Christ Spirit. That reality is our Buddha nature. That's who I'm getting at. Buddhists say, if you can really be mindful of this moment, it will provide all that you need. That's the power. That's the beauty. Because when you are mindful of your thinking, and you don't let your thinking define what is real in this moment. I thought that I am, I'm thinking that I'm afraid. I'm thinking that I'm inadequate. I'm thinking that, I feel I'm angry. When I'm aware of my anger, when I'm aware of my fear, and I say, that's my feeling, that's not what is real in this moment. What is really real, the thoughts that I have and the feelings that I have of despondency, of inadequacy, of meaninglessness, be aware of them. Let them be. Don't fight them. Because so often in the past I go, I shouldn't be feeling this way. Well, damn it, I do feel this way. This is sort. Accept that. There's a certain kind of letting go, which includes acceptance. You accept the fact of what you're feeling, and then you let it go. But first you have to accept it. There is something that can be almost miraculous about that.
When we sit well, all our sins, if you will, or our limitations disappear like frost or snow. They just vanish. Because this moment is the only moment that truly exists. The past is memory, the future is speculation. Sit right now, work right now, serve right now, do it well. As we get older, we realize our limitations. They can almost crush us, and we realize the difficulty of change, even for the better. But it is not good Zen practice to become obsessed with the idea of growth or change or enlightenment. That can just make us sick. We must accept ourselves as we are in this moment. Accept the light that we have, even if we don't see it. And be grateful for it, and grateful for the gifts of others who can teach us. Don't tie ourselves in a knot trying to improve ourselves. That just puts the emphasis back on the self instead of the moment. For me, Zazen is prayer. To come into the presence of mystery and sit with attention. Physical attention, physical attention, the presence of ultimate truth. To sit with reverence for that truth and gratitude for the experience itself is prayer. Attention, reverence, gratitude need not be spoken. We don't have to use the words. What would I do with words? Would I try to remind God of something God forgot? Would I beseech God to pay attention to someone else as if God was not paying attention?
Being fully in the present moment is when joyful situation arises, you become joyful. And very painful situation arises, and you feel pain. And something sad appears, you're sad. And something really fantastic appears, you're totally surprised. So you are like a very fresh child in a way, to see everything for the first time. It's like falling in love with life, as if every moment is your first love. So that is the present moment. But I didn't know it when I was younger, because I have big dreams and big ambitions, and I wanted so much in life, and I want this, I want that, and then so much want always brings so much suffering. So there are moments in my life I had a really dark night of soul. I walked into that valley, and sometimes I got so depressed, it is unbearable. And that moment I learned how to be in present moment from my psychotherapist and from my great Buddhist teachers. Present moment, that's all we have. It's this very moment, only here and only now. And that is what life is presenting to us every moment. And we miss this, we miss entire life. I wish I got it 30 years ago. But that is all we have. But most of us are really, most of the time, regretting about the past and worrying about future. But when we really know how to be at the present moment, then even big suffering is bearable. So, present moment in my very difficult time of life, it pulled me through. It carried me like a great wind, great love, for a very loving mother. Take me just this moment, next moment, then you will be fine.
much time do we have?
It's 10:55.
Good time. Good time.
Would you like to ask questions or comments? Well, you take over from here. I hope you enjoyed that. It's a lot longer than what we usually have in the way of video presentation. But for me, it's kind of a wish for the new year as well as for this present year, for the holidays. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. Comments, questions? Yes. What did this bring up in you?
I thought it was excellent, and I liked how when they crossed over to studying the other practices, it filled in gaps for them in their first source of spiritual orientation. That it filled in gaps for them in investigating the other religion or spirituality. It answered questions over here that they hadn't been able to answer with their own life. So it opened up all kinds of possibility there. Thought that was excellent. We didn't hear as much from the Buddhist side toward the Christian side, but definitely the Christians were saying there was something to expand on our knowledge that opened up their own Christianity more when they got into Buddhism.
Yeah.
That was incredible.
That is for sure. When I think about this, because I have a pretty deeply rooted Christian background, when I think about how I was taught and now how I understand, what I love about this is it's a wide path that many people can join and be a part of rather than an exclusive path. And it's inclusive, and that's very, very different than my background. But I think my understanding and love for Jesus was that he embraced the broad and rejected the narrow.
I know for
That's
myself.
what drew me to Jesus was he accepted and would embrace the broad and rejected the narrow, which was often the religious point of view.
Well, I think true spirituality, whether it's Eastern or Western, Judeo-Christian, Muslim, Zen, any other form of Buddhism, which there are several, it's about unity. It's about the fact that we are one. And somehow we always keep that us versus them. Good, bad. Yes, no. And if we can bring ourselves into that non-dualistic unification, which is what interfaith is all about, then we are all Jesus. Then we are all Buddha. Then we are all Muhammad. Then we are all the atheists. Thich Nhat Hanh has a wonderful long poem called Call Me By My True Name, which is that he's everybody. And so if we can live that way with a lens that we look through instead of taking sides and being difficult. I think most of you know that I struggled with Christianity and found Buddhism and just was enthralled. But the pastor of my church called me into his office and said, "You are no longer welcome here because I understand you." Well, first he said, "I understand you've been studying Buddhism." I said, "Yes," and I said exactly what he said. I find I'm getting along great because it's working for me. I tried to explain myself a little bit. And so I feel like I have a dual spiritual citizenship. And he said, "Well, you'll have to take it outside." Because you are no longer welcome here unless you accept Jesus as your one and only Savior. You cannot be in a Christian. You should not be in a Christian church. Well, I kind of felt like who was the girlfriend that said Jesus didn't say that, and he didn't. But it was that narrow-mindedness, and I was fascinated when I watched this film that the Buddhist had a narrow-minded attitude when he was first asked to be ordained. They said, wait a minute, he's a man. Anyway, for each of us individually, if we can actually go into the non-dual situation for a whole new year, I think it will save all of us a lot of suffering. Don't you? So that's what we're here for, at least
Diane and I have been working in the Happiness Project, and it is a non-dualistic idea that there are bridges between people here in Costa Rica, the outsiders and the insiders, and we're the outsiders, by the way. And that we are one here. It's a very non-dualistic idea that we all belong here together, and that we have to take the chances of knowing what that is, taking the risks of getting out of our comfort as they did there. And there's a really interesting thing that happened in Minnesota, which has a tendency, where I'm from in the U.S. There was a big Somali population that moved into Minnesota, sponsored by the church. Sponsored by a lot of churches, who sponsored families, and then and Muslim Somalis. And in the general culture, there are some, pockets of difficulty in that, especially after 9/11. But the Lutheran church that I came from had potlucks downstairs where the Muslims and the Lutherans sat down and talked with each other to try to understand each other. It happened for like 2 years. It was sponsored by the Lutheran Church. And it did an enormous thing in changing the culture of Minneapolis. In doing that, but what a risk. What a risk. I'm sure that plenty of the people in that Lutheran church, plenty of people in the Muslim community had their problems that this was happening. But that's to be said when you move away from non-dualism. And so there's so many ways that this applies to us. I think that it's just really lovely. What else would you like to say? Yeah.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I know that there's a theory, that's the word I was looking for, that in the Bible they talk about Christ in his younger life and then as he's in his 30s, but that missing time, and the theory that he went and studied with the Buddhist monks. I don't know, I like
The similarities are very, very.
yeah, I really like that idea, and it kind of pulls in here, that how similar and the foundations of both spiritual teachings, how they tie in together.
There's also some evidence in Eastern books that say that there was someone who came from the Middle East, who was enlightened, and who became enlightened. So it's very interesting. I know my Bible. I know my Bible better than I know the Buddhist teachings, and If you want to read Buddha, read Matthew 5, 6, and 7. Read Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, and there is Buddha. There is the same spirit, the same ideas, the same beauty, the same depth about how to live our lives.
So I think the challenge for all of us is to change our lens, our perception, from dualistic, where everything is opposite, to a sort of non-dualist viewpoint, where it is all one. And if we can do that, I think it changes how we see each other along the way. So maybe that's a resolution that we might actually be able to keep. Does anyone have any quarrel with what was presented? I imagine everyone here, I'm just imagining, was raised in a Judeo-Christian home. Not Muslim, not Buddhist.
There's some
Is that true?
there's some Jewish friends here.
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
I was raised with no religion.
Now, we could do the same thing as here from any one of any blood, any of the ingredients. But I think it's a testament to the fact that we are broadening the Judeo-Christian Roman Empire take on life.
It's a challenge, though, is it not? To not stay within our comfort zone. It's a huge challenge. We want to stay with people who think and identify and like, and then therefore there are others. And then you're back in dualism.
That's really new.
John has something.
I ran into that same point a long time ago because even within Judeo-Christian religions, there's a lot of conflict.
There's a lot of what?
Conflict. And perhaps it was most evident in Northern Ireland back in the Troubled days. I did some reporting from Northern Ireland, and it was awful. I've never been so frightened to walk through the streets of the city than in Belfast, because you can be shot just because you happen to look Protestant or Catholic, and I couldn't get my head around that. And I ran into this remarkable Protestant clergyman named William Arlo, and his solution was to take people out of their comfort zone, like Catholic youth and Protestant youth, and take them over to the Netherlands for a seminar, and get them out of their communities and allow them to discuss what they had in common. And it was remarkably successful, and it built those bridges.
When was this,
built.
John?
Oh, this is back in the
They're in trouble?
Yes.
yeah, they were at their height, and that same spirit gradually built in the peace agreement and eventually eased those troubles to a remarkable degree. But just getting out of your comfort zone to a neutral area, much like in meditation, we focus on the here and now, but it's not the here and now. It's the here and now in our minds that is divorced from some of the troubles and some of the thoughts that make us angry or emotional. If we can get to that place and have a dialogue there with ourselves and with other people, we can overcome some of those difficulties and become more like one.
You know, I think the biggest discomfort zone we have is sitting still and silent on our Christmas and going to them. You know, if you have all kinds of opinions in this world out here, you can find other people to hang with that have the same ones. And you get this affirmation all the time. So you feel like you're right whether you are or not. Yeah, so, but if you have to go in here and face the things that you think, your own opinions, your own prejudices, your own, you know,
Even your own contradictions.
your own contradictions, your own dualism. That can get really, you know, as the lady said, I can't meditate alone because it's like a bad neighborhood in there. I gotta have somebody to go in with. So, but it, you know, it is. Nature just comforts me. And I think the reason everyone was quiet, am I right or am I wrong, was that when we're faced with spiritual things particularly, we become quiet and we digest what we're hearing. We don't have an immediate sense of what we're talking about. We just kind of absorb it. Is that true for the rest of you? I know when I watch this, I just kind of absorb it.
I gotta say, Christmas time, you know, all the stories that we were raised with, or most of us, about the manger and the stories and all that goes with it, and the songs, all the Christmas songs, and there's something about it, you know, over the since I found Buddhism really in a bigger way, that they have kind of departed from that, and even have found some of the songs that I used to love as being ridiculous. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. The stories don't really, you know, I like the sound of the music, but the words don't really match. And so I'm thinking about, for instance, when people come, and I've had up in hospital, the chaplains come. Have you found Jesus and all that? And I'm like, I'm Buddhist. And I kind of want to find a place where I'm not making them wrong, or want to discount what they have to say, because they've made this beautiful facility that is doing so much good. But what's kind of underneath it is this separation, and kind of, you know, when I say that, it's kind of shut down, like, well, she's lost. She doesn't get it.
Yeah.
No, truly, you don't.
She's lost.
You don't get it. You need to be saved. And so I kind of not want to make them wrong, even though there's something about that like, well, Jesus isn't going to do it for me. I mean, I don't even get that. You know, have you found Jesus? I don't even get it. I was raised Catholic, not so much on the Jesus side. It's like Christian is more Jesus, and Catholics were more the Holy Spirit and the whole Trinity thing. And they weren't so heavy on the Jesus, but that's not important. But I don't even get that whole thing about have you found Jesus, have you been saved? Otherwise, you're lost. And
I don't get it either.
know
Well,
more about that.
we've talked about this before.
Yes.
That there are really two types of Christian theologies. There's a redemptive theology, and there's an incarnational theology. What we're being presented today is an incarnational theology. The New York United Theological Seminary that the people came from, in that realm of thing, that the Spirit of God lives within you. Many times need to be awakened, you know, and those things. Versus, you're wrong. You need a Savior. Here is the way. Accept it.
Exactly.
So that's where there is a divide in these two. But there's a beauty in the other thing, you know. I mean, you alluded to it. Look at all these beautiful things that they're doing, and so that's incarnation. And so you can, for me, I can attach to that. I have many people that ask the same questions of me now, and I often just say, me and Jesus are good.
Well, I found that in all the years that people have spoken to me about Dharma, that are breaking or have been removed from the Christian church or from temple, they don't have a problem actually, anybody, with Jesus. It's only with the church or with the culture that they're in. Jesus gets kind of short shrift in most people.
Jeff, am I mistaken? In my readings, I don't ever remember Jesus specifically saying, you need to accept me as your Lord and Savior.
I am the way.
There's a verse, and I know my verses. John 10:10b.
John is a very late teller.
Yes. It depends whether you worship the Bible, or not. But John 10, I am the way, and this is what he says: I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. There it is. That's the one that, and the famous one, John 3:16. God so loved the world that He sent His only Son, that through Him all might be saved. These are many quoted Bible verses, but I like to quote other verses, that have some level of contradiction to that. Yeah, of course.
Speak up. Louder. My hearing aids aren't working.
What?
She's very Christian and very her mother.
Speak up real louder, please.
Yeah, none of us
Thank
can.
you.
Everyone heard the part about my mother is very Christian.
Yeah.
So one day when I was very lost and I was going with her, and she said, well, the only way back to God is through the Son. And all I heard was the Son. And when I connected to the Son, yeah, my mom is so cute. When you said that, the only, that whole saying, that, and it was kind of like, when you really get to the top, and you transcend it all, you're at this place where everything's God. You're like, who are talking, everything.
Everything's gone.
Yeah.
Hey Sharon, I think not long ago, I was spoken to in that way, right? Have you found Jesus to share you saves, And he was a young man, and he meant it very sincerely. I can tell you, because he was spending time Bible reading at our place, And so I think I just said something to him like, yes, I have found Jesus in my own spiritual path. And at least with that person, it seemed to fly. Because I appreciate what you're saying. I don't want to just by saying no, that dual thing that happens. I don't want them to think I reject all that. I accept that you accept that, and I just have a different path.
That's beautiful.
He accepted it. He accepted it. There was two of them, and they were like nodding.
I tend to respond, why, have you lost him?
Jesus with a small J. Jesus known by other names, right? In other neighborhoods.
Anyway, hopefully, this was in the spirit of Christmas.
Yes.
Today, and inclusivity, and broadness, and enlightenment, right? That was your intention.
Absolutely. I hope it was obvious. Could have been more so.
No.
But anyway, so we're ready for meta?
Yes.
Okay. It all does seem to come back to love. And unification is found in the four immeasurables in Buddhism, just as it is in Christianity, which is loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, which is feeling not only the suffering but the joy of all others, and then equanimity. So everybody here, if we don't have newcomers, I guess we can just go into the meta right away. Take a moment and express your gratitude loosen up a little bit.
As loud as you can, yeah.
Talk loud. I'm not. Am I talking too soft now?
I know people outside.
Okay. All right. So here we go. Beginning with ourselves. Bring yourself to your mind and say to yourself, may I be well.
Sorry.
May no harm come to me. May I live with ease, equanimity, poise, balance, the middle one. May I live with ease, calm, and peaceful. May I be happy. And now, bring to mind someone you love. Someone you love with all your heart. Look at that person. Smile to them. Say their name. Leaning a little towards them, say, may you be well. May no harm come to you. May you live with ease, calm and peaceful. May you be happy. We take a deep breath, we smile to them, we go one circle farther out to a neutral person. Someone you have no ill will towards, only good will, but you like them, but you don't really know them, and if you don't know his or her name, just address them straight. So let's say it's someone who waits on you in your favorite restaurant, but you never really knew his name. And you say to him, dear friend, may you be well. May no harm come to you. May you live with ease, calm, and peaceful. May you be happy. And now, moving farther out in our circle of compassion, we bring to mind someone with whom we are in conflict. Look at this person without malice, seeing them simply as another flawed person, just like yourself. And say to him or her, may you be well. May no harm come to you. May you live with ease, calm and peaceful. May you be happy. Take another couple of deep breaths. You can feel a little constriction from that, let go of it. And now take your hands and place them on your heart. And bringing to mind all sentient beings everywhere. Millions, billions, millions, billions, bajillions of sentient beings. And say, may all beings everywhere, on on this plane and all other planes, be well. May all beings everywhere be safe. May all beings everywhere be free from suffering. May all beings everywhere be happy. Breathe deeply, and when you're ready, release your hands, open your eyes, smile at your neighbor, hello birthday boy, hello birthday lady, hello everybody. And we will end with our usual, go in peace.
Go in peace.
Go making peace.
Go making peace.
Living gently.
Living gently.
Loving mightily.
Loving mightily.
And bowing to the mysteries.
Bowing to the mysteries.
Merry Christmas, everybody. And happy birthdays.
Thank you.
Everybody?
Yes.
Everybody.
Everyone.
If you're looking for something on New Year's Eve, we go meet at the beach, and we're going to